CPUC approves broadband grants for projects in low-income areas of California. Arkansas becoming the first state to sign a BEAD grant agreement with Amazon Leo. Meta launching a data center workforce training academy. Amazon signs a multi-billion-dollar fiber deal with Corning. And the FCC's Spectrum auction picks up some steam. Those stories and more on This Week in the Broadband Universe. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Craig Corbin. CPUC, the California Public Utilities Commission, on Thursday approved more than $18 million in broadband infrastructure grants for projects in low-income areas of the state. $14.68 million from CASF, the California Advanced Service Fund, unanimously approved for Plumas Sierra Telecommunications. That grant will fund 4 broadband projects across 3 counties and will connect nearly 500 unserved locations. In addition, $3.4 million was approved from the CASF Rural and Urban Regional Broadband Consortia grant account for a total of 6 projects in 16 California counties. One other note, CPUC approved the CASF budget for fiscal year 2026-27, total of $136.21 million, split into 6 accounts. The largest portion, $58 million, slated for the Broadband Infrastructure Grant account. Meta launching a 5-week-long workforce academy. There will be no charge for the program, and graduates will be guaranteed a job at a Meta data center construction site. Meta putting $115 million toward the program, with pilot academies in Louisiana, Ohio, Indiana, and Texas. According to Associated Builders and Contractors, a partner in the Workforce Academy project, the construction industry needs to add an estimated 349,000 net new workers this year alone in order to meet demand. Amazon in the news on a number of fronts this week. Among those stories, Arkansas holds the distinction of becoming the first state to finalize a BEAD agreement with Amazon Leo. That will earmark $1.76 million in BEAD funding to connect over 1,700 locations. Amazon Leo had earlier backed out of BEAD agreements with both Texas and Nebraska. On another front, Amazon inking a multi-billion-dollar deal for Corning to supply fiber to its data centers. This expected to result in the creation of more than 1,000 new highly skilled jobs at Corning's North Carolina-based manufacturing facilities. Amazon last year had announced plans to invest $10 billion for expansion of its cloud computing infrastructure in the Tar Heel State. And you'll remember back in January, Corning locked in a $6 billion deal to make fiber for Meta's hyperscaler data centers. And just last month, NVIDIA invested $500 million in Corning to help build 3 new plants in both North Carolina and Texas. And one last Amazon-related story, the FCC threw a lifeline to Amazon Leo by approving a waiver on the deployment deadline of July 30th to have launched and put into operation roughly half of its planned 3,232 first-gen satellites. The waiver keeps Amazon from losing its license on the spectrum required for its home internet service. The company currently has just more than 300 LEO satellites in orbit. Deadline for full deployment, which is July 30th of 2029, remains in place. The long-awaited AWS-3 Spectrum auction has now finally gained a bit of momentum. After 36 bidding rounds, a total of $1.33 billion in bids have been submitted. 17 companies were pre-qualified to participate in the auction. EchoStar, very much an interested observer since they are on the hook for anything less than a total of $2.9 billion in bids. Elsewhere, approval this week from the FCC on the NCTA's petition for expedited waivers on foreign-made consumer broadband routers. NCTA cable operator members will be allowed to make limited Class 1 and Class 2 hardware changes to routers presently on the FCC's covered list. Class 1 changes are minor and do not change the RF characteristics of a device. Class 2 changes can alter RF performance or device emissions. The expedited waiver will remain in effect until June 9th of 2027. Google no longer serving as a Citizens Broadband Radio Service Spectrum Access System operator. Existing customers will continue to be served for another year. Google, Federated Wireless, and Sony were the original Spectrum Access System operators approved by the FCC. Customers are now being referred to the current list of approved CBRS SAS administrators, which, in addition to Federated Wireless and Sony, include Red Technologies, Keybridge, and Nokia. U.S. Department of Justice on Friday approving Paramount's $111 billion acquisition of Warner Brothers Discovery. Approval of the merger did not require any divestitures, behavioral remedies, or concessions, a surprise to even the most optimistic of expectations. And finally, results from the American Customer Satisfaction Index's Telecommunications Study 2026 are in, and internet service providers have been ranked for reliability, video streaming quality, data speed, and performance during peak hours. ISPs were divided into two categories, fiber and non-fiber. The internet providers that were fiber category, AT&T taking the top ranking with an ASCI score of 79, followed by Brightspeed Fiber, just a point behind, Xfinity, another point back at 77, G-Fiber, Google Fiber, and Verizon Fios rounding out the top five with scores of 75 points each. 6 through 10, Optimum Fiber, CenturyLink, Frontier, Windstream, and Earthlink Fiber. The largest jump came from Brightspeed, up 8% from last year's survey. And in the non-fiber category, Verizon 5G, number one with a score of 79. Just a point back, T-Mobile 5G, Starlink at 76 points, Cox 72, AT&T and Spectrum both with scores of 71. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on This Week in the Broadband Universe.